From Billionaire's heiress to rags, how a poor boy changed her life forever. The moon hung low, a silent witness to the tremors of fate about to unfold. It was a night thick with tension, as though the universe itself held its breath. In a sprawling mansion painted by the whispers of riches, Harper Vale felt more trapped than ever. The diamond-encrusted chandeliers sparkled mockingly above her, illuminating her perfectly manicured world where silks and satins felt heavy with expectations. But deep inside, she craved something more, something real, something dangerous. Harper's life was a symphony of predictable chaos, a prison disguised as luxury. She often felt like a puppet in a grand show, dancing across stages designed by others. It wasn't until she met Jake, a boy with dirt under his fingernails and fire in his green eyes, that everything shifted. He wore his poverty like armor, and despite his lack of material wealth, he held the power to make her feel truly alive. The first time their worlds collided was electric, a moment both thrilling and terrifying. She'd been racing down the resort's south back road, her convertible purring like a wild animal, when that boy appeared like a ghost from nowhere, standing with a defiant determination that rendered her breathless. The crash was inevitable. Metal crunched like an old soda can, and the world spun in a blur of chaos. In the seconds it took for the dust to settle, Harper felt fear clawing at her throat, but it was the look in Jake's eyes that froze her heart. They were intense, questioning, challenging. Who was this boy? How could he make her feel so many things at once? There was something peculiar about Jake, the way he seemed unbothered by the glittering world surrounding her, as if it meant nothing at all. He captivated her with stories of struggles and dreams, tales that clashed with her sterile life, leaving her yearning for something she had never dared to chase. But not everything was so simple. Rumors swirled through the halls of her life, whispers of betrayal that clung to the walls like damp shadows. Would this boy, with a heart as wild as the winds, strip away her carefully crafted facade or pull her deeper into a storm of uncertainty? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. There was a moment when Harper stood at the precipice of change, her heart racing like a wild stallion in open fields. Jake offered her a way out of the gilded cage, a chance to paint her own future. But the shadows of her past loomed large, and with every tick of the clock, the stakes grew higher. What had she gotten herself into? And would her impulsive leap toward freedom lead to liberation or devastation? The answer lingered just out of reach. Harper stared at the crumbled wreckage of her car. The sound of sirens wailed in the distance, each note slicing through the tense air like a knife. Everything felt surreal, as if she had stepped into a nightmare from which there was no awakening. She could hardly fathom the noise that echoed around her, a cacophony of chaos, disbelief, and fear. Would her life ever be the same? Jake had stepped away from the scene, circling the twisted metal, his brow furrowed with a complexity of feelings she couldn't decipher. Was he angry? Scared? Or was it something deeper, something that reflected their worlds colliding and shattering? His rugged form contrasted with the elegance of her surroundings, her pristine world gradually falling apart at the seams. The sirens grew louder, pulling Harper back to reality. She felt a surge of panic slice through her veins. What would her family say? What would they do? All those carefully manicured facades were about to collapse, as fragile as the glass scattered on the pavement. Harper. The voice cut through the murmur of the crowd gathering on the roadside. Her father pushed through, his face a mask of rage and worry. What the hell happened? His eyes darted from the car to her, searching for answers, searching for someone to blame. It was an accident. She shouted, but the words felt hollow even to her. An accident or a sign that everything was about to change? Jake watched from a distance, his posture that of defiance against the looming shadows. He seemed so free in that moment, while she felt like a bird with clipped wings. The distance between them felt insurmountable, thick with uncertainty. What if this moment altered the trajectory of their lives forever? Suddenly, the whispers from the crowd turned sharper. Who is that boy? What was he doing on the road? Does he even belong here? Each remark punctuated Harper's anxiety, shame creeping in like a slow tide of cold water. As her father turned his wrath toward Jake, Harper felt the walls closing in. Would they tarnish him, branding him with labels she'd long fought against? A boy from the wrong side of the tracks, an outsider who dared to encroach on her world of privilege. She wanted to scream at them, to protect him, but all she managed was silence, a plea for things to go differently. Jake's eyes met hers across the distance, and for a brief moment, they stood together in a collision of worlds. She saw determination in his gaze, an unyielding spirit that called to her amidst the noise. The pull was magnetic. It was dizzying. But would that spirit survive in her universe full of constraints and judgments? Get in the car, Harper, her father barked, the command dripping with authority. It shattered the moment, sending wave after wave of reality crashing into her. Could she really go back to her flawless life after this? Harper hesitated, glancing back at Jake. The decision felt monumental. In one heartbeat she would return to her gilded cage, but in another, she could embrace the chaos that Jake offered. As she stepped toward her father, something sparked inside her. What was at stake was more than a car accident. It was her sanity, her desire, maybe even her very soul. The sun began to rise on the horizon, casting golden light over the wreckage like the eye of fate observing a critical choice. And then she heard it, the sharp clang of the distant sirens transformed into a sudden cry of pain, piercing through the morning calm. What had she just awakened? The very thought threatened to unmoor her. Would this mark the moment when everything unravels, or the beginning of a revolution? The decision lay before her like the horizon, boundless and fraught with reckless wonder. Harper's heart raced. The scream echoed in her ears, choking out every thought. It was like a gunshot in the stillness of dawn, an ominous signal that something had shifted in the world. She froze for just a moment, her father's barked command and the thrum of the crowd fading away. Harper! Come on! We need to leave. Her father's voice was a snap, like a rubber band pulled too far. The cry had come from the direction of the road beyond the wreckage, a chilling wail that signaled either pain or chaos. She turned her eyes slowly back to Jake. He stood rigid, tension in his shoulders, an unyielding presence against the backdrop of the wreckage. The crowd was murmuring, their faces a mix of curiosity and horror, but beneath it all was a sense of dread creeping over the scene. What is going on? She whispered to herself, feeling the weight of her father's glare. Jake's expression shifted from defiance to something darker, more pained. Was he witnessing something she couldn't see? The wail echoed again, and a chill ran down her spine. She had to know. I can't just leave, she thought, pushing against her father. They need to know what happened. As a few people in the crowd began to look in the direction of the sound, Harper felt a surge of bravery. She turned, stepping away from her father's grasp and toward the commotion. What is happening? She called, her voice rising above the crowd. A man falling apart in the grass caught her attention. A few onlookers surrounded him, their eyes wide but helpless. It's my brother. He was in the car. The words ripped through the air like a knife. The man was clutching his head, tears streaming down his face, twisting his shirt in anguish as he pointed to a crumpled figure just beyond. Harper's stomach dropped. She fought to keep her focus as the crowd parted. In the gruesome embrace of reality, she saw the blood-soaked shirt and the pale face lying on the ground. It was a boy, barely a teenager, wide-eyed and unconscious. What have I done? Harper gasped, the truth settling into her chest like lead. Suddenly, Jake surged forward through the crowd. He kneeled beside the boy, urgency transforming him. Knees dug into the gravel as he expertly assessed the situation. Every gesture told her he had seen this before. His voice, steady, commanded the crowd's attention. "Someone call 911. The reality of the moment met her painfully. They weren't just innocent bystanders. There was no shade to hide under, no family name to shield them from this mess. Harper's world of privilege felt frail against the rawness in front of her. She stepped closer, her breath shaky as the gravity of her earlier decision weighed heavily. What do I do? Suddenly, the uncertainty of everything loomed like looming shadows. Stay back! Jake shouted as the sirens grew nearer. His attention never wavered from the boy. Astra had died, but she had no claim to regret. In that instant, facing the raw, visceral reality of everything she had ignored about Jake's world, the thoughts of her father's anger felt petty. She could no longer stand on the sidelines. The car accident was only the beginning, a pinprick that popped the illusion of her perfect life. She reached for Jake, her fingers brushing his arm, desperation igniting her. Is he going to be okay? His jaw tightened. We have to do what we can. But we need to be ready for whatever happens next. As they both crouched together, the sirens approaching rapidly, Harper felt the ground shift beneath her once again, the very foundation of who she was cracking apart like the metal of her once perfect car, and just like that, the horizon she thought was predictable turned into a storm of uncertainty. What truth lay ahead? What decisions would they have to confront together? Harper's breath caught. What if she didn't like what she found? The sirens wailed in the distance, a wailing chorus rising and falling, much like the panic swelling inside Harper's chest. Each sound sliced through the tension, every second feeling like an eternity. The boy lay there, lifeless and battered, while the crowd surged behind them, a vortex of fears and whispered concerns. Is anyone helping? Why isn't anyone doing anything? Harper's voice trembled, tiny against the chaos. Jake's focus never faltered. We need to keep him stable. Stay calm. His command cut through her spiraling thoughts. He was in control, so she clung to that. Harper watched as he took a deep breath, reached for the boy's wrist feeling for a pulse. Come on, his whisper was almost a prayer, laced with an urgency that made Harper's heart race anew. And then, for a moment, silence reigned. The crowd held its breath, all eyes fixed on the boy, on Jake. She heard the distant wail of the sirens, but it turned into a dull roar, muted by the heavy atmosphere. Jake, please, she fought to keep her own breath steady, but panic threatened to spill out. Then he looked up, his eyes filled with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. He is faint, but still alive. Harper felt the air rush back into her lungs, a marionette cut from its strings, crashing to the floor. But her relief was short-lived, reality loomed heavy and dark. I'm calling, she started, even as the panic threatened to pull her into the depths. The concept of calling her father, telling him about the accident, felt too monstrous. There would be questions, accusations. No, she mumbled. I can't call for more help. Jake's voice snapped her back to the present, where the boy's life hung by a thread and her indecision felt almost criminal. Someone, please. We need help over here. She cried out again, desperation now bursting through every seam of her being. And even as she shouted, something in the crowd shifted. Eyes started to widen, and whispers morphed into frantic murmurs. The crowd parted slightly, and in that opening, a figure emerged, black leather jacket and a cocky, confident stride that seemed out of place in the turmoil. Get out of the way. It was a boy about Jake's age, toughened by life in ways Harper couldn't fathom. He pushed closer, eyes scanning the scene. What happened? It's an accident, he needs help. Jake shouted, blood-streaked hands still working at the boy's side, fighting against the odds. But the newcomer didn't flinch, he was already shaking his head, assessing the situation. Who the hell are you? Jake demanded, voice hoarse with adrenaline. I can help. There was something in the stranger's voice, a confidence that caught Harper off guard. Get the crowd back. Voices buzzed like angry bees, tension building. Who was he? Did he know what he was doing? Harper. Tell them to step back. Jake's tone was sharp, piercing through the haze. With shaking hands, Harper turned to the crowd. Please, give them space. She noticed the man's confident manner was infectious. People reacted, slowly pulling back, granting them room to work. Her heart pounded, torn between confusion and hope. The sound of the sirens grew louder, now just around the corner, a promise of impending help. Harper's thoughts spiraled. What if they didn't arrive in time? What if she had never stopped, never turned to face this head-on? Don't panic. She called, though her own voice felt brittle. Just hold on. With every passing second, the boy's life was becoming a tightrope walk over an abyss. As she glanced back down, she saw the connection between Jake and the newcomer. It felt charged, almost electric. What was hidden beneath their rivalry? What destinies were woven together in this catastrophe? Stay focused. The stranger barked. We need. A loud explosion crashed from the wreckage, sending jolts through the air. The crowd gasped, shrieks mingling with the wail of the sirens, reverberating inside Harper's chest. In that moment, she realized this wasn't just an accident. It was a storm brewing. A switch had been flipped, and nothing would ever be the same again. What lay on the other side of the chaos? With a sinking feeling, she held Jake's stare, wondering what truths were about to surface just as reality began to unravel around them. Would they be ready for the storm? Would they survive it? She steadied herself, heart pumping. The boy's life hung in the balance, and with it, the fragile threads of her world. The smoke hung thick in the air, curling around Harper's throat as screams broke out, people backing away from the smoldering wreckage. Her stomach twisted with every gasping breath. They were alive. The boy was still alive. But as she stared at his pale face, a flood of uncertainty crashed over her. Focus. Jake's voice pulled her back, but it wasn't just urgency behind his words. It was panic, and she could feel it gnawing at him beneath his bravado. We need to clear the area. We need to check for injuries. The stranger interrupted, kneeling beside the boy with a sharp confidence that felt both unsettling and oddly reassuring. He was unfazed by the chaos, as if he had danced through darkness before and emerged whole. Jake shot him a look, frustration flashing in his eyes. We have to stabilize him first. He could cervical spine. If he's injured, we can't move him too much. The newcomer's tone was clipped but knowledgeable, sending a rush of adrenaline through Harper. He turned his attention back to the unconscious boy, rolling up his sleeves as blood spattered onto the asphalt. Someone needs to check his head. Hold his neck, but steady. Harper's hands trembled. She had no medical training, but instincts kicked in. She sidled closer to the boy's head, feeling the weight of the moment. What do I do? Just hold it, don't move it. The stranger's gaze flared with urgency but also something else, a challenge. It made her grit her teeth. They were in this together, strangers united by fate, and she wouldn't falter now. From the corner of her eye, she caught sight of the crowd. Faces were paled, and the murmurs warped into hysterical cries. The shock settled like a dark cloud overhead. The sirens wailed, but they felt too far away, just a haunting melody alone in the distance. A sudden crash pulled her attention back to the wreckage. The car, twisted and contorted as if it were a child's broken toy, billowed black smoke. Flames flickered, bright and greedy, licking toward the crowd with voracity. It's gonna blow. Someone screamed, and chaos erupted anew. Back. Everyone, back now. Jake shouted, forcing people away from them. Harper felt the pull of fear as she looked back at the boy, whose pale lips barely parted in the cool night air. Just hold on, please, she whispered, her hope mingling with despair. There was a flash, a blinding light tearing through the chaos, and time seemed to freeze. Everything held its breath. Then an explosion rocked the ground, the force of it throwing Harper and the boy several feet. She felt the asphalt hit her hard, an electric jolt of pain climbing through her body. For a moment, everything was a haze of dust and smoke. Confusion washed over her as she lay there, each heartbeat a frantic drum roll of concern. Harper. Jake's voice broke through the shroud, and her eyes fluttered open, wild and desperate. Are you okay? Please, just the newcomer staggered back, but he steadied himself, rushing back toward them. Get him, he can't die. His eyes were fierce, and for a moment, Harper saw determination igniting in the charged air around them. In that instant, a realization hit her. This was more than just an accident. It was dark intentions lurking beneath the surface, and they were caught in a twisted scheme far beyond a mere crash. With her heart racing, she pushed herself up just enough to glimpse beyond the edge of the crowd. A pair of dark figures loomed near the wreckage, faces hidden in shadow, but their intent was clear. Something more sinister was unfolding, drawing closer with every passing second. Jake! She shouted, just as the crowd shifted anxiously. A new urgency rippled through her body, entwined with frantic hope. We need to move now. The moment hung heavy, every breath pregnant with urgency. Just when she thought the storm had come crashing down, she realized they were standing at the precipice of a deeper, darker reality. What would they face next? Would they be able to escape not just the accident, but whatever lay behind it? As the sirens finally rounded the corner, Harper knew they were only at the beginning of a much larger battle. Harper's heart raced as she scanned the crowd, the chaotic scenery blurring into a surreal nightmare. The dark figures moved with purpose, glancing back towards the explosion, whispering to each other with low, urgent tones. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were more than mere bystanders, they were involved. Harper, come on. Jake's frantic voice pierced through her thoughts. He was pulling her to her feet, his eyes wild with fear. The stranger still hovered over the boy, his hands moving rapidly as he pressed down on a wound, a mixture of blood and grime marred the asphalt beneath them. Please, Harper whispered, her own voice shaky. We can't just leave him. He needs help. The stranger shot back, his focus unwavering. But the cops are coming. We can't be here when they do. We'll take him with us. We can't leave him to die. Her voice rose with desperation, her argument hanging in the smoke-filled air like a weight. I can't do both. The stranger snapped. I can't. A piercing scream cut through the noise, and Harper's blood ran cold. The figures had turned away from the wreckage, their focus now entirely on them. They moved with an unsettling fluidity, dark shapes creeping through the chaos, intent on their target. They see us. Jake yelled, his grip tightening around Harper's arm. Move. With a burst of adrenaline, she grabbed the boy's limp body, and together with Jake, they lifted him. The stranger was right behind, casting wary glances over his shoulder as they sprinted down the street, away from the smoke and flames. Every step felt like a countdown. Harper's chest heaved, her mind racing with terror. How could this be happening? She glanced back at the dark figures, their silhouettes menacing in the flickering glow of the fire. Faster! Shouted Jake. We can't let them catch us. They were running blind, panic pulling them deeper into the unfamiliar streets. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, yet it felt like the danger behind them was far worse. She felt the boy's body, so fragile and unmoving, and a wave of determination surged within her. He's not dead, right? She choked between breaths. He can't be. The stranger paused, flipping the boy gently. His pulse is faint. Keep your focus on him. Stay calm. Harper felt the weight of responsibility settle over her, heavy and suffocating. As they stumbled into an alley, the world around them blurred, the chaos fading momentarily as they pressed against the cold brick wall. But safety was an illusion. She could still hear the voices growing closer, the echo of their steps too loud to ignore. Do you know who they are? Jake panted, his face pale. No idea. The stranger bit back, pulling a cloth from his pocket, trying to clean the boy's wounds with shaky hands. But they're not just criminals. They're organized. What does that mean? Harper felt her voice rise with anxiety, every word weighing heavily on her. It means, he grumbled, swallowing hard, we're definitely in over our heads. This was no accident. We need to find a place to hide. Suddenly, from the mouth of the alley, the figures appeared, looming larger than life. Their gaze was sharp and predatory, and Harper felt her throat constrict. They advanced slowly but with purpose, and time seemed to stretch cruelly as fear clawed at her insides. What do we do? Harper whispered, eyes darting between Jake and the stranger. Stay quiet, the stranger urged, his voice barely above a whisper. They're looking for someone. Dark shadows loomed closer, and for Harper, the fight was just beginning. They had to decide whether to face the nightmarish challenge and uncover the truth or flee into the uncertainty of the unknown. The tension crackled in the air, thick and tangible, as she realized they were far from being out of danger. What secrets lurked in the cracks of the city? Would they manage to stay alive to unravel the truth? The night was still alive with peril, and nothing was what it seemed. The figures drew nearer, a collective shadow looming ominously over the dim alley. Harper held her breath, the sound of her heartbeat thudding wildly in her ears as she squeezed her eyes shut, praying for some unseen force to shield them from discovery. But hope felt fragile, like the boy they clutched tightly in their arms. Stay still, the stranger whispered, pressing against the brick wall, his own breaths ragged and strained. Jake remained right beside her, his skin pale, almost ghostly in the dwindling light. They could see the sneering expressions on the approaching figures, their movements synchronized and sinister, as if they were part of some greater, darker design. What were they looking for? Anxiety twisted in Harper's gut, making her dizzy. Were they after the boy? Or were they here for something else entirely? Suddenly, one figure, taller and broader than the rest, stepped forward. A husky voice poured from his lips like thick honey laced with poison. They can't hide forever, he growled. We'll find them. We have to find the package. Her breath caught in her throat. The package? What did they mean? Was it the boy? The stranger shifted, his eyes darting to Harper. We need to move, now, he hissed. Without thinking, Harper nodded. They had to escape before they could learn more, before those dark intents turned into action. They quietly maneuvered down to the far end of the alley, where a side street branched off. Just as they turned, Harper heard a sharp gasp. A loud thud echoed against the wall. Hey! Over here! Shouted one of the figures. They see us. Jake whimpered, but before he could react, the stranger bolted down the side street, pulling them along with him. They sprinted blind, racing past flickering streetlights that cast unnerving shadows across their path. The sirens still wailed in the distance, a reminder of the chaos erupting elsewhere. Harper glanced over her shoulder and saw them breaking into a run, matching their pace with unrivaled determination. Turn here. The stranger led them down a narrow alley that twisted around buildings. Harper could feel the warmth of blood seeping through her shirt where the boy lay across her shoulder. A desperate surge of urgency filled her. Just a little further. Suddenly, a shot rang out, sharp and piercing, ricocheting off the walls. All three stumbled, and Harper's heart lurched as they huddled closer for protection. Keep moving. The stranger yelled, his voice fierce. He rushed forward, eyes scanning like a hawk. But the sound hung in the air, suffocatingly loud, and now they were running from bullets as well as dark figures. They skidded around a corner, and Harper stumbled, nearly losing her grip on the boy. Jake steadied her, but fear had a hold on them, choking in its relentless grip. Where do we go? Jake gasped. I don't know. Harper cried, feeling frantic. Somewhere, anywhere. Then she noticed a flicker of light ahead, a dimly lit doorway, partially concealed by a trash bin, a doorway that whispered of potential safety. That way. She pointed breathlessly, hope flaring unexpectedly in her chest. They pressed forward, darting into the threshold just as the pursuing figures echoed behind them, their eyes sharp and darting like predators closing in on prey. As they slipped inside, Harper knew the moment would soon come when they would have to confront what they had just fled from. Inside, the air was thick with dampness and the unmistakable scent of old wood. It was dark, but a sliver of light seeped through cracks in the boards. As they paused, hovering between the doorway and whatever lay beyond, the stranger pulled out a small flashlight, illuminating the cramped room. "Listen," he breathed, his voice low. "We can't stay here for long. They'll be searching. But if we don't find out what's going on, we won't survive this." Harper met Jake's eyes, both of them reeling from the chaotic whirlwind that had thrown them together. What was the truth that they had stumbled into? And now that they were in this together, could they really trust each other enough to see it through? The question lingered, heavy and foreboding, as they gripped the edges of uncertainty and brushed against the terrifying knowledge that the facade of safety was merely a reprieve, but would they soon find the courage to uncover the answers, even if they led them to unimaginable danger? The dim beam of the flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing crumbling walls and a scatter of debris that danced beneath their feet. A chill ran down Harper's spine. The room felt more like a tomb than a refuge. "Where are we?" Jake whispered, his voice trembling like the flickering light around them. Harper felt a knot in her stomach, a premonition of despair that gnawed at her. "I don't know," the stranger replied, his brow furrowed as he scanned the corners of the room, seeking any sign of danger. He lowered his voice, urgent. "But we need to barricade that door." Before she could comprehend the gravity of the situation, he rushed to a nearby shelf, dislodging a few boxes and dragging them to the entrance. Harper hesitated but soon joined him. Together, they pushed the shelf in front of the door, a feeble barrier that felt like it could be swept away at any moment. "Is that really going to hold them?" Jake shivered, clutching at Harper's arm. Panic lit his eyes, and she felt his fear settling deep in her chest. "We can't just stand here," Harper insisted, desperation seeping into her words. "What if they find us?" "Stop," the stranger snapped. "We need to think. Harper, look for anything we can use for weapons. Jake, help me check these boxes." Harper's pulse raced as she rifled through the chaos. She felt like they were trapped in a nightmare, memories of the alley rushing back, the looming figures, the gunshot that echoed in her ears. She was stuck in an endless loop of dread. She came across a broken piece of metal, jagged and sharp, its tip glinting ominously under the light. Gripping it tightly, she turned back to see Jake and the stranger busy rummaging. "Found something!" Jake shouted, excitement threading through his fear. He held up a rusty crowbar, imperfect but deadly. The stranger nodded in approval. "There's no going back once they catch us." "We need a plan," he murmured, then paused. "We might have to fight our way out." "What if we don't have to fight? What if we can sneak past?" Harper suggested, her mind racing. "There's got to be another way out of here." "Listen," the stranger urged, looking at them both with intensity. "That group isn't just after the boy. They have a mission, and it's bigger than us. If they find him, it's over." His words sent a ripple of terror through Harper. She glanced at the boy, who had grown eerily quiet, his face pale against her shoulder. "What's so special about him?" she managed to ask. The stranger hesitated, his gears turning as dread clouded his expression. "I can't tell you everything now, but trust me, he's important. We can't let them take him." The atmosphere thickened, the weight of the unknown pressing heavily. Harper's thoughts raced, dissecting every stray word, every glance. What had they stumbled into? The truth felt just out of reach, buried beneath layers of chaos. Suddenly, a sound broke through the silence, a low thump, echoing from the door they had barricaded. The three of them froze, hearts hammering. "Did they find us?" Jake whispered, eyes wide as he clutched the crowbar tighter. "Stay quiet," the stranger ordered, pressing his back against the wall, muscles tense. Harper swore she could hear the pounding of her heart over the muffled sounds. The thumping escalated into a frantic pounding, a fist relentless against the wood. The room trembled under the pressure, and Harper knew it wouldn't hold for long. "We have to get out now," she exclaimed, adrenaline firing through her body. "There's got to be another way." A flicker of hope sparked as she spotted what looked like a narrow crevice at the far end of the room, barely wide enough for someone to crawl through. "There." She pointed. "We can escape that way." "Let me go first," the stranger said, moving swiftly toward the crevice, but before he could reach it, the door buckled under another blow. Their hiding place felt like a choking cage, closing in tighter with every moment. "Come on," Harper urged, beginning to squeeze through the narrow opening. She glimpsed sunlight breaking through the dust, an avenue of possibility outside. Desperation fueled her movements. Jake shoved the crowbar into her hands before diving in after her, and she felt the tension of the stranger hold back for just a moment. As they scrambled through, the door finally splintered, sending a cascade of wood tumbling to the ground. The figures poured in, a dark tide that flooded the room. "Go! Go!" The stranger barked, just as the nightmare closed in, and Harper knew this was only the beginning of their fight. What would they uncover outside? What awaited them in the unseen world beyond? Harper's pulse quickened as she pulled her body through the crevice, dragging Jake behind her. The sunlight outside hit them like a splash of cold water, waking her senses fully. They tumbled onto a damp, overgrown patch of grass. There was no time to breathe, let alone think. The stranger emerged after them, his face twisted with grit and determination. "Run!" he shouted, gripping the rusted crowbar tightly, scanning the surroundings for the imminent threat. Through the haze of fear, Harper took in their new world, a desolate field dotted with broken-down cars and crumbling structures that looked like they'd been abandoned for ages. The landscape felt unforgiving, swallowed up by tall, weedy grass and shadows of buildings that loomed like menacing spirits. "Which way?" Jake gasped, looking to the stranger, his voice quaking. "North," the stranger barked, pointing toward a distant cluster of trees. The sound of footsteps pounding behind them sent Harper's heart soaring into her throat. They took off, racing toward the trees, the chaotic thud of footsteps echoing through the air. Harper risked a glance over her shoulder. The figures from the building emerged, dark silhouettes eclipsed by the weakening sunlight, closing in on them. Panic clawed at her lungs. They couldn't let those shadows catch them. The stranger led the way, moving with a determination that belied the fear coursing through him. Harper could see the boy struggling to keep pace, his thin legs working hard. Every few steps, he glanced back, his breath coming in shallow gasps. "Jake, stay close," Harper said, her voice barely cutting through the rush of wind. She reached back, gripping his hand tightly to keep him steady. He had to be with her. They couldn't lose him. Suddenly, a shout rang out behind them. "Stop! Don't run!" The command rolled like thunder, sending chills down Harper's spine. "Faster!" the stranger urged, his eyes fierce with resolve. But in the depths of the trees, Harper felt a wave of dread wash over her. Branches clutched at her, snagging her clothes, pulling her back into the darkness. Just as they dove deeper into the woods, a branch snapped nearby, the sound crisp and shocking against the frantic silence. They halted, breath heaving, pressing their backs against a rough bark of a tree, hearts thundering in their chests. "Did they see us?" Jake gasped, fear etched into every line of his tiny face. Harper shook her head, straining to listen. Light laughter echoed through the woods, an unsettling sound that chilled her. "I think they went this way," a voice called out, laced with malicious glee. "Shit," the stranger muttered, clenched fists trembling as he looked between Harper and Jake. "They can't know about the boy." The woods felt alive with danger, shadows looming around them, stretching toward the trio hiding behind the tree. Harper's thoughts raced. The boy mattered, but what did that mean for them? Just then, she caught a glimpse of movement off in the distance. A figure emerged, hesitant, circling the trees. She squinted, trying to make sense of it when she realized it was a woman. Her clothes were tattered, her hair unkempt, but there was a flicker of recognition in her eyes that sent a jolt of hope through Harper. "Please," the woman whispered, seemingly attuned to their plight. "I know a way out." Before Harper could process, the stranger tensed. "We can't trust anyone." "Desperate times," the woman replied. "They're coming. You want to stay alive." With a shared glance, despair and hope colliding in their eyes, they made a choice. No matter the danger, they had to risk trusting this stranger if they wanted to uncover the truth behind the boy's importance. As they edged toward the woman, the air thickened with impending dread and questions. Were they making a mistake? What labyrinth of lies lay ahead? The sound of cracking twigs drew nearer, and the whispers of pursuit echoed louder. Just as the woman motioned for them to follow, a piercing scream ripped through the air. Harper's heart froze. Was it the boy? "Go. Now." The stranger urged, and with a mix of courage and fear, Harper felt her fate hanging by a thread, precariously open to whatever awaited them down this dark path. What secrets were they about to unravel? And could they trust the woman leading them? The sun hung high now, casting a golden light over the ragged landscape, as if accusing Harper for everything that had transpired. It felt strange to breathe, to stand still after the chaos they had just escaped. They were huddled in the unfamiliar woods, a fragile buffer against the nightmares still lurking in the shadows. The woman with the tattered clothes stood before them, eyes filled with urgency and something more, a desperation that echoed in Harper's chest. "Stay close. They don't play fair," the woman urged, pulling them into motion once again. The sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, chilling. Adrenaline shot through them as they hurried after her, hearts pounding like war drums. "Who are you?" Jake asked, his voice shaky. "Someone who knows how to survive," she replied, glancing over her shoulder. "You need to trust me if you want to get out of this mess." Harper's thoughts collided. Trust? They had just fled from a group of shadowy figures willing to kill for an unconscious boy, and now they were expected to blindly follow. But with every breath of hot air, the horror of their previous escape pressed heavy against her resolve. Her eyes darted to the boy. They were fleeing for him as much as for themselves. Scenes of the wreck flashed vividly in her mind, the explosion, the panic, the blood. The stakes had never felt so high. "Why is he important?" she blurted out, her voice firm, as they moved deeper into the underbrush. The woman hesitated, breath catching for a moment. "He knows something. Information that could expose a larger operation." They'll stop at nothing to silence him. Harper's stomach turned at the implications. They had unwittingly pulled themselves into a world that felt larger than life, a vast conspiracy where a boy's existence signified the turning point of many crises. Just then, an ear-splitting crash rang out behind them. A branch snapped, followed by sinister voices chasing their every footfall. "There they are!" a harsh voice shouted. Harper felt the world spin on its axis as her body surged with fear. They broke into a sprint, branches scratching at their arms, but there was no choice: forward or risk getting caught. "Through here!" the woman shouted, leading them through a narrow gap between two trees, just as chilling voices rang out behind them, accompanied by the sound of hurried footsteps. Harper glanced back, desperation gripping her heart. They were closing in. The reality was darker than she ever anticipated. Time was a cruel master, and it felt like everything was against them. They emerged into a small clearing where the sunlight poured through the trees, and for a moment, it felt surreal. She could see more of the woman's features now. Deep lines etched across her face told stories of survival and pain. But they didn't have time to stay. The woman turned sharply, pointing towards a clump of bushes. "There's a stream nearby. It'll mask our presence." The group stumbled through the undergrowth, bending low and moving swiftly. Harper felt a surge of hope. If they could just disappear in the natural world, perhaps they could evade capture. "Do you think this will really work?" Jake asked, glancing at the woman with uncertainty. His youthful face was pale, mirroring the weight they all bore. "Trust me," she replied, her voice steady. The thumping of footsteps grew louder. Harper's mind raced as fear pooled in her gut. She couldn't let them find the boy. They were running against time, against people who wore malice like a second skin. They reached the stream, the sound of rushing water somehow grounding in this chaotic moment, offering a sliver of calm amidst the storm. As they crouched low, hiding behind the bushes, Harper's heart thundered. "We need to stay quiet," the stranger whispered, glancing urgently at them. They waited, breaths held, while shadows danced along the tree line as their pursuers paused at the stream's edge. "They can't have gone far," a voice boomed, echoing through the forest like a death knell. Harper wanted to scream, to break free of this torment gripping her. But just then, she felt a warm hand grasp hers, a reminder of Jake's presence, grounding her thoughts, bringing a wave of determination rising within. The woman's expression hardened as she peered into the darkness. "We'll stay here until they leave. Patience." Even as they hid, Harper couldn't ignore the boy's shallow breaths against her palm. Every moment felt like an eternity. She wasn't just terrified, she was angry. Angry at the situation that had spiraled beyond her control, angry that they were forced into this danger. But that anger sparked something else, an ember of courage igniting in her heart. They had to find a way to escape this. They had to make it for that boy. Finally, after what felt like hours, the voices drifted farther away. Resigned to a new plan unfolding, the woman exhaled slowly, her gaze sharp. "We need to keep moving. They'll regroup, and when they do." Harper nodded, determination seeping into her bones. "We can take him to the police. They can protect him." "Not just anyone," the woman replied, her voice serious. "You need to find someone who understands this danger, someone within the system who can help." "Do you know someone?" Jake asked, his youthful curiosity still flickering. "Yes," the woman replied. "But it's risky. We have to be careful." "Then let us be careful," Harper urged, pressing her lips together. "Whatever it takes." With new resolve, they pushed through the branches, stepping gingerly back into the world where danger still lurked but no longer felt entirely inescapable. They would uncover the truth. They would fight for the boy's life and face whatever darkness awaited them. This was her choice, and she stood ready to embrace it, fear mingling with newfound strength. Their journey was transforming, and as they ventured deeper into the unknown, Harper felt grounded by the people beside her, the boy, Jake, the woman. Together, they would face the storm. They were bound now, all in this together. Now was the moment for fighting back, the moment to take control of their narrative. They wouldn't let fear dictate their paths anymore. They were alive, and they would push through the shadows to find the light on the other side, but those dark figures would follow. Their twisted design had started to unravel, and soon, the truth would consume them all, from secrets whispered in the dark to the hidden layers waiting for the right moment to break free. They must be ready to face it head-on, for a fight was brewing, one that could change everything. And as the sun began to dip low on the horizon, it marked the start of their battle. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about what unfolds next. True fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Let us do it together.